Between Bhutan and Bangladesh in northeast India is the state of Meghalaya, a place of great natural beauty and ecological importance. A place where it is not unusual to meet an elephant on your way to work. A place where choices must be made concerning traditional and modern ways of life. Here in this remote, hilly tribal region, one ethnic group, the Garo, have begun to show how important rural communities are when they take the lead in mitigating and adapting to climate change. The Garo Hills presents a verdant landscape, blessed with abundant water, fertile soils, and a benign climate. Home to more than 1 million people. The region is also one of the few remaining areas where it is possible to find top predators, leopards, elephants, and biodiversity of all kinds.
Ja, selbagri songni asong ya ko jengo ambiat chima champa ke chamram ino songdong acha jengo ya songni mandirang ya songni songnok keparap anchi boli onimang iko mania Perisi mania changan si nuno thotsa Thotki rabar abai songdap kerki donin dagi seyuri bagnar. Taudi mani jadok. Taudi maina songsar kendong jadok na. Kristen ngan kun man jadok.
These villagers' ancestors have lived in and preserved these forests for thousands of years. Their traditional religion worshiped the spirits in all living things. Their legends reinforced a sense of wonder and awe about the forest. Generation after generation have loved the beauty of the natural environment and realized that it provided their food, their water, their shelter, everything that they needed in their lives.
Singade angade yang ni chingi song sasat kri ni kengko boreng donan ni singade yara mek panba tura thon kemek ni an cibis kong ani kemen aru ta uru de mo boreng bolgeng grede chuli jainga hani ma sin singa songgem meli ya machu kong songprot chingi adok ni boreng damsa ko rijap take donani singa songgem meli in dona ha maina ta uru de singa boreng bolgem ko rakianira 지릉 집이 스나 발바랑나 아 자송니 자송난 감사트 봉나바 동안이 제가 송감가 늑삼수에 이야기도나.
One of their neighbors is especially appreciative. Elephants are indigenous to this region. This is perfect elephant habitat. The Garo Hills has well over 1,000 elephants, one of the highest concentrations of wild elephants in India. To have such a high density of megafauna is relatively rare in modern times and suggests a natural system of very high ecological function.
We consider elephants to be architects of the habitat. They change the habitat by their feeding, by their just movement. They open new paths for other animals to follow, and by their dung. There's a number of animals, insects and others that survive on elephant bolus, on the dung.
Elephants and people have coexisted in the Garo Hills for as long as anyone can remember, and both are integral parts of the natural system here. For the people, yet another symbol of the health and wealth of the region's ecology has been the existence of another primate in the forest, the Huluk gibbon.
요 맞부릉을 아키게 되면은 느경아 마이나 맞부릉 동작엔 중화대 송어바 무큼라 송바 동작 으로 라키오 블롱에 남그네와 마이나 으로 마크린 그바 동작 스칼레스 강원이 만디랑 강원이 잘라 니베스 강원이 잘라바 만디랑 강알봉자 원 맞부릉 블롱에 남그네와 송나 잣나 무큼라 송바 동화.
There is sufficient data to state that a clear trend exists showing a marked decrease in the number of gibbons in the forest.
The gibbon population throughout India is declining at a very alarming rate. In the last 3-4 decades, nearly 75% decline in gibbon population has been reported. Through numerous surveys, reports, and repeated studies, it has been found that the gibbon population in Garo Hills is also declining, perhaps not at the same rate as through the rest of the country, but definitely it's very critical and it is very detrimental for the survival of the gibbons.
The fact that the local people revere the animal suggests that this is a fairly reliable indicator that the ecosystem is deteriorating. Traditionally, the type of agriculture practiced here has been to slash and burn the hillsides, known as jum cultivation.
The method of juming is basically just slash during the winter season and then let it dry, and then during March and before the onset of the monsoons it is burnt. And on the very first rains the seeds are planted and then the production starts.
The first year provides a relatively good yield, but with each crop, the productivity decreases.
Generally, a good jum cycle is between 10 to 15 years. But here in Garo Hills, since the jum area is decreasing, they are juming the same area in a shorter term. So, if they jum the area in a shorter term, the yield is not much.
왜 제가 대와 아바데 송금간차 송금간차 송금먹차바 마이 못담에 탈거니 못담에 탈탐 못담데 탈독게 탈신바 놓고만디 방아 그리고야 근데 괜찮으면 이거 막나 형와야 왜냐면 그먹간 되게 방에 우주 괜찮으면 보롱보롱 와가지고 거라 왜냐면 그뭐 집어 walso 괜찮은데 다우다 또 우마트랑 보내 takkan iba dong chom mocha 아르 지릉 집이 있을까 물렁은 특방 많자 이거 전체 제가 다데 리잡도 나네 송금은 휘용한 미팅에 넌 많자죠 가르다 시간에.
Change is coming to the people of the Garo Hills. They all have cell phones, and the transportation systems have improved somewhat. Electricity is promised at some point in the future. The modern world with its shiny wrappers and promise of more stuff beckons. But if the people go to town in search of a better life, they often only find that they don't have the skills needed to compete with the more sophisticated, better educated city people. This often means they end up taking the lowest forms of work, much worse off than they were at home.
mana tsinga nige ongen mana don thona de man jawa mana den diba don thong jawa don thong agdan wa igino ta kha saimon asimo government da chingni daka ko nikimang sanaba phal phiyene sanaba chi sale sanaba bari bagan da ke ni khasin onat ken chimo de namang igen ar khomiang igen mana angaba direct bonanang ge naba wa khoni don thona de man jawa niba na simangni daksakani ko manode angaba bignang jawa government ba bignang jawa mana namagen
지릉 지삼고 도나다니까 마니 데와 지사모사 미라코 바 고문다 잘륵 남마니 마가나 와랑오 방착게문 만디랑 지릉 지삼고스 강원인 아바차니금은 아바차바하 트레디셔널레 쟁원이 나고바니야명 노니면 jatna sungna chiring chibiskit pangani khonki aro rang khonki na apa chang khoyong ode chiring chibiskrang tken aro jamano dirang sudrang na namgni dong jawa iming mandang masiha.
Because of the destructive nature of the traditional agricultural practices that threaten this precious ecosystem, there are many individuals and organizations interested in protecting the Garo Hills. The Meghalaya Forest Department, the Garo Hills Autonomous District Council, and the Wildlife Trust of India, known as WTI, with the support of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, are all working together with the local communities to find a sustainable way forward.
The people are already aware that zooming is no longer feasible because they have seen the production and they can hardly sustain their families. So they are already out for ways and means of other alternatives.
And there is an elephant in the room, as it were. Actually, there are approximately 1,300 elephants in the Garo Hills. When the elephants and the people come into conflict, it is no joke.
Hazalgani cisa November ni cibri tarik Prangni 4:30 bajion wa anda geba Augusta onga anda kim biya agsaku watang naka angni jekba nachel khennaja ani gemen wa tos light rangko thikngen jakhalska aro tos light rangko wa athangni ja kholnasaan jakhalska ja ekbas wa ramarangchi jakasi jakra wa nate jakhalunga wan baksa wa mungmakho biya adita pit sekhang cibongani andalna skhangan ko nekacem ndiba mamang dakiba wan wa mungmana biya khatna aro rede khana mansrapja direct nekanin biya reksrape repme uko gostape gajet chole.
As tragic as such encounters are, they don't come as a complete surprise.
Tengade wan thanglan nake burung sambao wani gemen tengara mungmang apsan nake janggi thangani gemen tengara apsan mungmani daklani khoba nekaya tengaba burung baksa janggi thangoba tengaba kena janggi genang mija geta dokke galangode sotode
Idrang bate mo i aro
baba itu kira ba
ya fiskan mungmawan ko ma na tumo mungmar ko
India has a population of 1 billion people, and there's a tremendous pressure on the elephant habitat and the corridors. This is the reason why there's an increase in the human-elephant conflict everywhere, and people retaliate to the elephants are very, very serious. Sometimes they poison, sometimes they spear it, sometimes they shoot it. So in order to conserve the elephants, securing elephant corridors are one of the important priority under our project.
Given the lethal nature of some human-elephant encounters, the people's tolerance is remarkable.
On the whole in India there's great tolerance for animals, for wild animals, and elephant in particular. And as I told you, in the Garo Hills they have particular fondness for this animal, who they consider almost like an elder brother. You know, they refer to the animal in those terms that they would use for their own brother or elder in their family. So there is no doubt that there is frustration. I think it's more than frustration. Sometimes I'm sure anger, because there's huge amount of direct damage that the elephant is doing, whether it's crop damage or damaging their houses, or even killing people.
The land in the Garo Hills is now like a mosaic with patches of cultivation interrupting the closed canopy of the forest. Everyone wants to find a way forward that is good for the people and good for the animals.
We are working in close coordination with Wildlife Trust of India regarding the elephant projects. So our main idea is to create a corridor or a passage for elephants to traverse from one forested area to the next. So basically in between we have several villages and jhum plots. Whichever is the general path taken by the elephants, we try to secure these paths by having an agreement with the villages, by creating such corridors as village reserved forests.
안탕 전체니 때다데 볼 아거 빙도나 따보 차전 남바다 쯤니아데 아바 위 차오바데 미미시 남자니면 2층 나선 남자니면 아바랑 쿠데 땀데 갈그 강아다 강이하 네 가신데 터미틱 보나가긴 건데 아바 위 차니데 안데기시 전체야.
As human population has grown and pressure on the natural habitat has increased, it's become more and more urgent to find ways that both protect the needs of the people and preserve nature.
Over the years, what we find is that the people, the villagers, are so very eager to come forward in preserving their patch of land for conservation and for the elephants. And all they require is in turn some sort of incentive, and rightly so, because otherwise it would have been a jhum area which is productive for them, but they are giving a portion of their productive land for conservation works, so it's a great thing.
Aro chinga dura khalak ko somni ya committee holo rijap ni kemen jin saro ya rijap ko dona ha sasungna ba pathatana manjawa aro ya ko dona ode dijang sujang na mai ko dona gen mai ko pengen chingya dokte chonologen geba masino wachim aro ya nakeno ngobong mandirang ni kenani ba bong wa jukona wa rijap dona ode aba chatane de manjawa ya arang de government ni jawa anchi sungna noknan zatna sungna rpungna khatepnan geba thala danirang ko nim
지금 장기 당안에 초랑데 마문 받은 거죠. 바나 말고는 스타포 도인이 봐 바다 오피스를 만들어. 내가 말때 야간 배 측나 봐 발발해야 돼. 나 심막나데 바르다 바 디블로코 카하춤. 니바 나 심은 닥자. 아니 바다서 막해로. 니바 안탐나 프로나 측나 미롱 작공사나 나간 부하사나 디블롭 가야 되지. 측나 대단장이 판죠.
Without alternatives to the traditional agricultural practices, it is hard for the people to survive, let alone consider animal habitat or conserving natural ecosystems.
The location of this village is crucial because it links other chunks of forests with this major chunk biosphere reserve called Nokrek. So which is why this is not only important as a catchment but also as a link to the biosphere reserve. It's a crucial corridor for the elephants.
Ndakaba dongen chim ode ndakaba thane rang dongen chim ode bisongba ramatang khori geni anchancha aro ndagen matburung rang ba keben jelani rang ba zaman chen ching di rang sudang kang geni ma di chancha
rasul nang bido maini mana India au sanungza India au dong India ni apalo dongpa asongrang ba ansena dakchakani ko na namen khushi ombenga maina bisong anseni burung bolgram rang na khushi onchaka tepon asongrang ode tuang jaso gepon biap rang ode negna ningang jo
안승남 비용 이게 부시 오차가 무릉장 시오 동인 거 같은데 아로 안탕탕한 1억번 1억인 거.
Actually, people around the world are depending on people like the Garo to protect their forests, because this is the best way to absorb carbon from the atmosphere and naturally regulate the Earth's hydrology, weather, and climate.
Reserve Code Council ni forest ni akan thalata ni komani chinga ya reserve code donia adona chanchiha aro chanchim ya meeting ko chushwatang da songni nokni mandirang plakan aro chiring chibisko reserve na dona nanga nim jenma namniki songmu nokmung khomongi nangrami kamko meeting ko chushwatang da meeting ko kha.
Kalakay is not the only community that has decided to create village reserve forests. This project has already stimulated the creation of 9 reserves, and many more communities are now positively considering this option.
Mana yidi daugta chade aba chanam plasm nemo yore daugta sa abara bam gobermal chana nian ya tengani chanche chum diba daura chingni nike chanche ni khoras ko bada de ribai government ni mandrang ba chingna aganda pis kitapen ani mun dade hain dake ode an chende ri japton phuna nike don nanange ni mu chade chanchi don projok mena an chingni ba namgine wa ar government ba namgine wa ar mat burung na ba namgine wa mandina sanong jak kamak.
Although the communities are making decisions about their lands, they are receiving incentives to do so. These include capital investment and technical support.
Yan sarsa shua. Sarsa musia dengan barsing ayan ang din digi mana na yan. Sak mo sarsa shua. Yak gemuk sing. Na sung den dak klima na din na. Ni bisa dauta na sung ta WH ni kita ribai meng. Na sung bagan ha ini ko masa ade na sung ko batak chak ko ni mo ade akana dauta na sung dak chak chok. Mana apa wian de bersih taman wan galani mo yadi chasung ni galani rong jaman di jangi thang de pati non kami chana mana ni ko nambat ke pong aero. Mana apa wi cha de bola wa ko san yu sian sian ungaya. Jangi thang nara manja. Bersih muk chung ya chana manja. Arang sen us thong abataya. Mana dak kula abri ko ko apa wi bai dau bau jangi thang na mana. Abachan dak play persian ti we mamung kam sedung jan diba apal te daw te station taka ko kamichan ning thakna ba man bata chana ba man bata ning nikani ba dong jabata yanam bat ko pangaya.
The Wildlife Trust of India asked the local people what type of support they would like to receive. Sometimes this is very specific. The Aratika community asked for a motorboat.
Enake songmo kon namblongen namgine unjok bisong yaring ani uni daude si jokyan ke mon khali ar teke si jus rakhalan koro yaring dongode bazal rang rioba songno kli mande sio saneba bia dongo ogmak na altwe jangi thanga simen rang sauba salade salenga negemang.
People who have been living by slashing and burning the forest have limited employment skills. But one thing they can do is plant trees. These forested areas are simply wonderful and open up the possibility of ecological tourism, which allow others to enjoy these beautiful areas and provide a potentially large alternative livelihood for forest communities. By voluntarily choosing to set aside land for village reserve forests, the Garo are doing something of immense value. They're helping to maintain elephant habitat and corridors. And they're ensuring that the water cycle is protected, reducing the threat of flooding and drought. And through photosynthesis, they're ensuring that carbon is being absorbed by the enormous amounts of vegetation that grow in the natural forests. What sort of world do we want? Do we want clean water, clean air, to live in harmony with wildlife? If we do, we have to consider how to protect and conserve forests and how to support the livelihoods of those who live in and protect the forest.
Arumat burungba, rijab tonggen semua abri poronggen semua banerugen. Wan mandini gamako China nangigen, mandini donako China nangen. Niba dauta niki rijab tongde makri rangkol kemek kan ruimuk fisyongnya pol wa biti kemek ke China rungi runa manginado. Uru dongosa, rangkol dongosa, makri dongosa, dauta barsak dongosa, macok dongosa, mungma dongosa, matma burung dongosa, belum nak sunu namgene unga. Uni kemen ya mat burung rangkode, donanang cumata tade kemek ciumkan. Ya dari bukre sanungja nokre ko sanungja, ji song nokumukan dongnananga.
Many people may be talking about the need to take carbon out of the atmosphere, but the communities of the Garo Hills are actually doing it. This model, if applied by thousands and millions of villages around the world, could end deforestation and reverse the trend by restoring vast areas of degraded lands. The world needs to recognize that it is not the bankers, the politicians, or the carbon marketers who can physically mitigate and adapt the Earth to climate changes. It is these people. Their contribution is of enormous value and needs to be celebrated, and they need to be supported.
Like